Hello friends, let's go over some tips and tricks for beginners when it comes to the use of the timeline. First, let's have a look at our master settings. Click on the clock here in the lower right corner and go to the project setting, and I always make sure that I set my timeline resolution to my liking and the frame rate. I usually go with 24 frames per second since I most of the time are editing feature films. And now let's have a look how we create a timeline. I open the media pool and then I just hit Ctrl and N to create a new timeline. It's of course better to give your timeline an appropriate name, especially if you work with bigger projects. Then it's always good when you know what timeline has what purpose, has what content in it. But for now I'm just going with timeline 3. And you see it automatically switches to timeline 3, and there is of course no content in it at that moment. You see here that you can, in this drop down menu above the player, switch between the different timelines. You easily rename the timeline by double clicking on the name, and then you can just go and change the name, what I'm not doing now. So let's close the media pool for a moment, but it's actually better to put some footage on it. Let's have this. Let's reset the attributes. For this footage here I had attributes changed for another tutorial, so I quickly changed them, reset them all. So let's put some footage on the timeline. You have here that slider where you can stretch out your footage over the timeline, or better said, where you can stretch the timeline, zoom in and out. What I usually do is I hold the Alt key pressed and then go with the mouse wheel to have this same effect as the slider. It's just you get used to certain shortcuts and certain handlings while you are learning and while you are using DaVinci Resolve. You can also click here on this icon and then you zoom into the timeline to the full extent. Then you have the detailed zoom. Yeah, that's pretty much it. And I like my custom zoom a lot. When it comes to the track names, of course in this case you just have one video track, one audio track. But if you have a track for B-roll and a track for some effects or an adjustment clip on top of it all, then you probably want to rename your clips accordingly. The same is true for the audio. And you will also see that the video tracks work like layers. So let's put an effect on it, just something like a title here. Then you will see that the title is on top of the clip. You wouldn't do that this way, where the title is below the clip. There are other occasions where you would do that, and I have tutorials on that, but then it has a special purpose. Just so you know, let's delete that. Let's take an image, for example, and here with the handles you can change the opacity to blend them in and out. And you see what's on top of one clip will block the view on the underlying clip. You saw that automatically a track was added when I put that footage on it. You can easily go here, right click in the area of a clip and then click on add track, and then you see that another track is added. Same thing if you want to delete it, right click on it, delete track, and then you are back. What's also important is the following. Let's say you have edited a track and you don't want under no circumstances have any changes applied to them. What you then do is you hit the log track icon, this little slot here. Same for the audio. And then you will see that it's grayed out. So that signals us we can't do any changes no matter what we do. These are now carved in stone. Let's unlock them. This is, you have a mute button here for the audio track and a solo. The mute, of course, makes sure that you can't hear the audio track and also not hear it in a render if you render your video out. And the solo track will solo it. Let's say you have a diversity on audio tracks, a voiceover, music, and so forth, and you only want to hear one, you want to focus on one, then you can hit the solo button and you just hear one. Our auto track selector is a very interesting one. They are checked by default, and what they do is, let me grab this footage and put it here. Let's say we want to cut. If no track is explicitly selected and you hit Ctrl B or you use the cut tool, I always hit Ctrl B to cut. You see that now every clip is cut. And that's not necessarily what we want. Sometimes we just don't want that. We want just to some clips never be cut. For example, audio clip where you have music and you want to have it in one piece and not in 30 little pieces. So what you can do is you can hit auto track selector, and if you now put your playhead here and hit Ctrl B, you will see that it has not been cut. You will see still the audio has been cut because I had the auto track selector still on, still active here. Let's undo it. You can also explicitly cut a track even though the auto track selector is activated. If you explicitly choose a clip so that it has this orange outline and you then cut it, the other clips will not be cut. So it's entirely up to you how you are going to work with that. Another nice thing here is if you don't want to hear the audio track of a clip, or if you have a discussion with somebody who is reviewing stuff with you, you can then dim the audio. The volume goes down by 70% so that you still can hear the people you are talking with and a little bit of the clip's sound in the background. And then when you click on it again, it will return to the normal volume. It's a very convenient thing. You already saw how we can switch between timelines just above the player. If you have just one timeline, of course, then you will not have a drop-down menu. And that's pretty much it for now. That's all a beginner needs to know to get around in the timeline. Of course, there are lots of other tutorials in this playlist and I hope you enjoy them. Thank you very much for watching. Have a great day ahead and goodbye.